So welcome everyone to our weekly Tuesday night Pau Hana time here at First Unitarian Church of Honolulu. This is our treasured and storied tradition that's been around with us for about 9 months now. And every week that we feel like it, we get together and we talk to someone about what's going on in their life or the world around them or something like that. We don't get too heavy-handed with the mute buttons here, but if you can be aware of your muting and unmuting. And then also if you have questions, I mean, really, we'll make time for questions, but it really does flow easier if you send them to me in private mode. Then I can kind of stack them up, and sometimes people have the same question and it's just easier to do it that way, but I'm not going to require that. So yeah, but with us we have DeReau Farrar. Hi DeReau, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm good.
Good.
It's very stormy here in Portland today.
Stormy? Well, what do you mean? Like
it has just been raining nonstop, and the wind is ripping apart everything that it can. But you know, that is a beautiful thing too. I'm from California, so I'm from a place where water is very highly valued. So I don't mind when it falls from the sky, even in excess.
Ooh. It's funny how place does that to you. Like growing up in a place that's just always kind of worried about water, and then being in a place where they're worried about having too much just a few hundred miles up the coast. Strange, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I always thought that's what it would be like to live kind of in those parts that are at the end of the Colorado River that's slowly drying up the farther up it gets because of Las Vegas. So, yeah, scary.
Well, Las Vegas and some other things.
A few other things.
I'm looking on the Portland weather thing, and I hate to tell you this, it says 100% chance of rain for a long time.
Oh yes, I know.
I've seen it say 100%.
Yes, I know, and it's nonstop. It's not just rain for a few hours here and there. It has not stopped dropping water from the sky for 2 days now.
Wow. Well, you guys didn't know you were signing on to hear DeReau's takes on riparian water rights and rainfall, but that's really what we're going to talk about. But
well, and also TJ, you said it's a few hundred miles up the coast, but really, it seems deceptive. Los Angeles is 1,000 miles away from here.
Is it?
Which is unreal. It is.
Yeah.
I guess that's like driving from New York to Florida. Like that's how different it is. Yeah.
Yep.
That's true. Yeah, because it was 200 miles just between Tacoma and Portland. So
that's right. Yeah.
Okay. It's all just, I think, because I'm thinking of the Mercator projection map, it seems like shrunk on the west side. Everything just seems closer. But
well, and California is more than half of the West Coast. So
true. Yep. Yeah. Well, good everyone. Thanks for coming. This is our Ben geography lesson with DeReau teaching. No, this is wonderful. Yeah, I was just on study leave. I'll be talking more about that next Sunday after church. I'll do my annual How Did TJ Spend His Time program. It's very fun. I don't know if you've ever seen this. I do a pie chart of exactly how I spent every hour of my year, and I do this for the congregation. You're nodding like nothing surprises you anymore.
That does not surprise me.
Not us either.
So anyway,
Wait.
Yeah. What's that, Kimberly?
I thought I muted myself. Sorry. You do a pie chart as to your activities all year long?
Yeah, I track all my hours. And then I break them down into categories and then talk about and compare year after year, like what we've done. And yeah, it's fun.
Kimberly, he's an attorney.
Yeah, you're such an
Bill
attorney.
minutes.
Well, I used to bill every 6 minutes. Now I bill every quarter hour. So, but I bill. Never mind. I was about to say I do all this much work for half the money, and I'm twice as happy. It's so weird how that happened. So DeReau.
We're glad that that's true. Thank you.
I know it's actually a lot less than half, but that's okay. Speaking of the decision to be a minister, DeReau, do you have anything to tell us?
Sure, I can tell you that I just this week matriculated at Star King School for the Ministry and the MDiv program there.
Congratulations. This is
Thanks.
stellar news.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I always, there was a program in the 60s where pretty much anyone could go to one of the divinity schools on the East Coast for just 1 year. So it was like funded for just the first year of divinity school, where you take intro to Bible and Old Testament, and you take like, a few of the other like basic courses, like the history of Christianity and stuff like that. And the idea was just that there was this huge movement that felt that even a year of divinity school changes the way you look at religion and faith and understanding and belief and how it works in people's lives to such an extent than it ever had before, that doing that, and then you could stay on and pay your own way, but it gave a lot of people kind of an entry point. So I've always thought everyone should do 1 year of divinity school if they can. It's just, I know it doesn't work like that anymore, but it really is mind altering. So
Sure.
Yeah. How much have you done so far? This is your first week?
This is the first week. I'm in the intensive period. I'm taking 9 units of intensive coursework at the moment. And yeah, we'll see what happens after that.
So tell us how this came about.
Well, let's see, I'll skip the boring parts, but it really came down to Sophia, the Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt, who is the acting president of Star King School for the Ministry, while the actual president, the Reverend Dr. Rosemary Bray McNatt, is on sabbatical. And as acting president, Sophia called me and said, you can do this, right? You know that this is available to you to do, and that you probably should, right? And this is something.
I'm sorry to interrupt. If anyone doesn't know the Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt, like it's hard. You have to know her voice. So I understand the joke you're telling, that it's like Sophia Betancourt called you and said, you can and you should. And it's making me laugh. So because of her demeanor. So
yeah, Sophia, every word that she says to you is like the simultaneous feeling of drinking hot cocoa and receiving a warm hug. It's like you get, so every word, if every word she says to you feels like that, when she says to do something, you have no choice but to say yes. And so this was Thanksgiving weekend, and I said, well, sure, let me think about it. And then ended up sending her my materials in a few days after that. And now is now, and now I'm doing this thing. And I don't know what it's going to mean. I don't, I will be some manner of minister at the end of this process that is different from whatever manner of minister I am now. And then maybe I'll pursue fellowship with the UUA. Maybe I won't, and maybe I'll get ordained, and maybe I won't, but we'll see.
Well, I mean, you are the minister you have a bigger church than most ministers in the UUA now. Just if you just consider your choir, how many people are in the choral program at your church?
It's a little over 200 families.
Yeah, so that's a bigger church than half the UU churches already. So,
Sure.
I mean, I'm sure other people know this. I'm sure you know this, but like for those who don't know, the Portland church, the music program is a church within a church. It's got its own systems and its own practices. What song is it that you sing at the beginning of every rehearsal?
Oh, come and find the quiet center.
Yes, it's very beautiful. Yeah. So, well, this is very exciting. There was one question: how long do you think it's going to take for Rev status?
So it's a 90 unit path at Star King.
Yikes.
Which is a lot. I'm trying to power through as quickly as I can. I mean, if I went half time, it would be 7 years. I'm trying to get it done in under 5 if I can. So
nice.
Which is why I'm taking 9 units of intensive coursework right now to sort of front load. If I take too many courses during the intensive period, that's the equivalent of 3 intensive classes at one time. If I do that every year, then I can take it a little bit easier for the rest of the year, and still get done in under 5 years is the goal.
Very exciting. Very exciting.
Wow.
Yeah, we're very proud of you. That's very exciting.
Thank you.
Well, it's going to be a ton of work, and it's going to be wonderful. When you were saying that that Dr. Betancourt is the acting president, this is the second time she's been acting president of something really large. It makes me wonder whether she should write a book called Acting President or something, or whether someone should just make her president of something shortly.
Well, I think she keeps being the acting president because she has no interest in being the president of anything.
I know.
And I think this is actually her third time being the acting president at Star King. So
Okay.
yeah, she could write that book.
So this is going to be a nerd out on theology, everyone. But Dr. Betancourt, our illustrious professor of at Star King, was getting her PhD at Yale when I was starting my divinity school there. But she came up at Yale studying with Emily Towns. And Emily Towns is like the head of divinity now, of all of divinity at Vanderbilt. And so she had that weird combination of studying at Yale with Emily Towns, who's now at Vanderbilt, and like her connections just by virtue of the way she studied places her in a really kind of rarefied air in the world of theology, period, let alone the kind of theology that she does. And so that she is with our movement in many ways, and is kind of a movement unto herself, as well as a great honor to our movement. So it's very cool so that's why when she tells you to do something, you do it. That's a very long way to say that. So very good. Yes, and then so I have the same question that someone said. Other than this illustrious invitation, and other than just being said you should, what drew you to want to do it? Like, can you tell me about your call? Is there that you're answering here?
Yeah, so I mean, I can tell you that I've always felt that ping, that call toward ministry, but also I am very devoted to being a musician. And so in the traditions that I grew up in, that would mean that I would have formed myself, or been formed or called into a path of worship pastoring. I would have been a worship pastor, or a music minister, as some other traditions call it. And that is, so that is how I've always imagined my work and always imagined my role in the church system. And I've always managed to do that work without the ordination, and that means that also without the recognition, because that is the way Unitarian Universalism works, right? You're recognized not for what you do, but for who someone else says that you are. And so when the opportunity became available for me to do this, it just felt like the right next step. It would have felt like the right next step 10 years ago, but the opportunity was not available 10 years ago. And so here we are. And hopefully, part of what I hope is that there are people in the world, maybe you included TJ, but also Glenn Thomas Rideout and the Reverend Adam Dyer and some other folks, and Sophia Betancourt, some other folks who might be able to engage a conversation about what it might look like to re-envision the work that some music directors do, around being more of a worship pastor, a liturgical pastoral presence, and give some real intention to what we do in worship, and not just sort of throw it together with words and music, hoping that it touches lives.
Yeah. So you're raising something super important, which is, we can talk. We should really just talk about this. I do worship to transform. whether that's to transform a space, or to transform lives is really what I'm trying to do. And I think what you're talking about is that kind of dedication or devotion that everyone on the team is doing that. And I think there's been a misconception, and you maybe I should say, do you think there's been a misconception in the UU movement that it's only with a Rev before your name that somehow you have the ability or the something to change lives, when our educators and our musicians, I mean, when you really talk to people about like their experience in churches, I know this is no longer a question. It seems to me like it's educators and music programs that people always say that they always remember the most, or what drew them in and what really feeds them, right? I mean, I know that's a leading question, Your Honor, but I mean, tell me what you think about that.
Well, yeah. So there's this really strange history. When I think maybe we've talked about this a little bit here before, but when Unitarian Universalists decided, however that decision happened, whether it was intentionally or not, to let go of God, they decided also to let go of the mystery of call in terms of vocation. And so ministers forgot about their call, and started thinking about it in terms of an authority instead of a call. And in doing that, it became such that the ministers were formed as the only people in the community who were qualified, so they thought, to have a theological perspective, or to have a spiritual perspective in a worship setting. And so you'll even now, you'll find lots of UU churches where the minister does all the work liturgically, designs the order of service, finds all the elements, picks all the music, picks all the readings and all the words, all the pictures. And in some churches, types and prints and copies the order of service. That is still the tradition, because they are understood to be the only person who is qualified to bring something to the worship space or the worshiping community. And I wonder if it is now time for that perspective to shift.
It is time now. It is time that, sorry, we started this thing talking about time and me tracking my time. And I was just imagining literally watching the percentage of the pie go like this if I had to do all of those things for worship. Our worship team is exemplary here. It's very different than in a lot of places that I can rely on to pick readings. I can rely on to do things with the order of service, and we have a music team that I can say, I need this kind of song, and the spirits will come together and be like, well, I'm kind of working on this, or this is something that I know. And so there, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's also what part of what drew out the fellowship movement in the 70s and 80s and early 90s, which I can't remember if this church participated in or not, but a lot of UU churches were formed as fellowships or became fellowships, to get rid of that authoritarian minister presence that was messing things up. No, I think we were founded in 51, called our first minister a few years after that, and there's been a male minister ever since. Not that I'm telling you about yourselves, church, I love you. But
well, congratulations.
There has been a male minister ever since. Now, when there was a time without ministers, there were some visiting ministers. Dorothy Emerson actually came for a while and was a minister here, rest her soul. But yeah, that's one of the traditions here, certainly. I don't know how, I think though Nan, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think some ministers in the past here have been pretty hands-off a lot of aspects of the church. It's been a very strong lay-led and still remains like a very aptly lay-led place and fellowship. So anyway, that's just what we found. Someone is unmuted and it's a little loud where they are. I can't tell who it is. So, but anyway, I'm sure they'll figure it out. But this is exciting. So you were saying also, I want to kind of follow up about you were talking about the shape of your ministry or the shape of what this might look like one day. And I always have this, sometimes, you and I have talked about this before, and I don't want to scare anyone, but like, I've always wondered what it would be like to almost do a UU affiliated church that's more kind of even more open spiritually or theologically. And maybe that's what unity looks like in some ways, and what other kind of non-denominational churches look like. And I mean non-denominational in like, what I mean, like what a non-denominational Christian church looks like, and what that would be. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what is your vision of what would you see as something like that you were saying maybe affiliated with UU, maybe not? What would the maybe not look like for you? That's my question.
Well, so when I said that, I was talking about fellowship specifically, and I just feel like the UUA as an organization and as an ethical organization just has a lot of problems, and I just have to decide whether or not I want to align myself with those problems. But there's a rumor out there that that Blue is setting itself up to fellowship ministers, and I would be the first on that list to sign up if they decided to do that. So for me, it's not so much about Unitarian Universalism as it is about how it is expressed through the UUA, which I think is problematic. If not UU at all, who knows? Certainly Universalist. I mean, that's what we're talking about here, right? Certainly understanding universalism, and maybe taking advantage of a universalism that is not tied to hundreds of years of colonial history, and maybe use that as a starting place. What does universalism look like if we think about it brand new, and not tied to all the mistakes of the past, all the and for that instance, what does what does Unitarianism look like when not tied to eugenics per se, like or other things, or slavery, or what do these theologies look like when we strip them of the traditions that have become beloved, and understand them to be brand new and life-giving for the theology's sake and not for the tradition's sake? I don't know. Those are questions that I would ask.
I heard someone say once, or maybe I'm just making it up, but maybe I said it right now, but when you think of what Unitarian means, it's one God, and Universalism really means for all. So one God for all is really another way to say Unitarian Universalism, it's like in the classical sense. Classical Unitarianism means, but now we talk about Unitarianism in a sense, maybe more like unity, like unified, unus something. And I don't know about that myself. I mean, it's very hard to let go. Words just have such meaning and such history. But when you're talking about universalism being new, it made me think of a lot of evangelical pastors who have come out, a sense, as universalists, and in a sense seen their theology anew, with wiping away the idea of a punishing God and a hellfire afterlife being a possibility. Their whole theology shifts, and in a way that is kind of what interests me. Like, there's some on this island who told me sort of like their universalist coming out story, and it's so beautiful to hear. Just, I let the idea of eternal damnation go, and now my ministry is blah blah blah, and whatever is after is so much more beautiful than whatever went before. There's huge power in universalism, right? I mean, there's like a huge.
Yeah, I mean, it can change your ministry from being about saving souls to being about saving lives, and then you can see real results in real time. You can see people's lives transformed completely, and redeemed completely.
Yeah, that's what it's about, man. Yeah,
I think so.
Good. Then I think you're probably in the right place at Star King there. That's great. How's life otherwise? Anything new and exciting for you? How's church going?
New and exciting. Church is going fine, I think.
Sorry, me and DeReau know each other too well. Tell me more. No, I'm kidding.
Well, I entered this career thinking that I would be a choir director. And so now, having been 9 months without being a choir director is like, well, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
And also, do I even remember how to be a choir director anymore? Who knows? So that's, I'm ready for that to change. I'm ready to go back to my vocation and do the thing that I love to do. I'm very capable of doing the thing that I do now. I'm very capable of making music happen in the context that we have it now. And I'm lucky that way, because a lot of music directors got forced into a situation that they had no skills for.
I know. It's been hard for some people, really
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. And luckily I had some skills that were translatable. So I'm doing okay. And also I'm not, I came to this point in my career so that I would have the freedom to be able to do the thing that I love to do, and I'm not doing that thing. So
I know. My heart hurts for you, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm employed and I'm doing fine, which is more than a lot of artists can say, right?
That's true. That's true. Yeah, it's been there. The innovation piece of like having to do new things for a lot of people has worn off, and it's gone to like, okay, I learned this new skill set, but like I kind of miss doing the thing that I want to be doing. Yeah. So, yeah. Anything else exciting? You have work, you have this new school, you have, I mean, that sounds like everything, right? Do you have anything else?
That's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Good.
I've just started the second year of my presidency of the Association for UU Music Ministries.
Well, that's right. You are a president of something as well.
I'm also the president of something. Yeah, and
how's that going?
It's going fine. And we're trying to figure out our relationship to the UUA and to the General Assembly.
Oh yeah, I saw that advertisement for looking for a music coordinator for General Assembly. How about what's going on with that? I don't know how much trouble you want to get in tonight, but I'm all.
Well, I mean, we're still asking for the UUA to behave ethically, and they're still saying that they will and not doing that. And so we go back and forth. We'll meet with them again next week and see what we can accomplish.
Okay.
I'd like to think that every conversation brings us a tiny bit closer. And honestly, we can be a mirror to some of the problems in the Unitarian Universalist Association and a mirror to some of the problems in GA. But we are not God. We cannot damn them. We cannot condemn them. They will like anyone, they will meet their own fate. And they will be remembered for how they are remembered. And that is just how it goes. But we will do the best that we can in the meantime.
For those of you who don't know and are not familiar with what we're talking about, do you mind if I just take a swing at this?
Yeah, go for it.
That the way General Assembly had been treating musicians involved in it was deemed by the Association for Unitarian Universalist Music Ministries to be patently unfair. The requirements, the timeframes, the lack of compensation. I mean, I had an office across the hall from DeReau when he was coordinating music for GA one year, and like I was hearing the other end of these conversations, and I was kind of shocked that someone was treating a musician, let alone the person coordinating the music, this way, and bringing them into the conversation months after worship was planned, and basically telling, here, do this song here, do this song there. And so there was essentially a revolt last year for General Assembly. That's not fair. There was a very, I don't know, professional discussion that says if this happens, then we're not going to take part. And that happened. And so a lot of the musicians did not take part. So if you notice some of the difference in music, even for our online assembly, General Assembly, that's partly why, is that a lot of the people associated with the Association of Unitarian Universalist Music Ministries declined to take part. And so we're coming up on GA again. And so these conversations are ongoing. Did I get everything, DeReau? Anything more you want to add on that?
No, that's pretty much it. I would only add that our declaration made it possible, or made it feel possible for the youth
Yes.
to do the same thing.
That's right.
They saw that there was an opportunity to have their voices be heard, and did the same thing for GA last year. And I don't know what their conversation looks like right now with the UUA.
Did you like the letter that our child Emiloa sent?
Is that from you?
Yeah, she wrote it.
Oh, yeah, I loved it.
Right. Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Anyway, this is yeah, it's nice. So, I hope that I don't know, I'm just very proud of her for standing up for the youth, for the young people. So, yeah, I don't know. We're just thinking of ways, friends, to get me and DeReau in trouble today and put it on film. So this is fun. But we had a question from Richard, who's been thinking, because he sent it to everyone. So I've been thinking quite a bit about universalism and the notion of a broken world. What would it be? Would it be a corollary of universal salvation that we are not living in a broken world? No, I would actually. Well, I'm sorry, I'm jumping right in. DeReau, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I will also say no. I don't think that's a corollary at all. I think, well, I guess it depends on what you mean by universalism, right? So there's two ideas. Universalism could be that everyone is saved no matter what. That's certainly how the UU ancestors interpreted it. And universalism can be also that everyone has equal opportunity towards salvation. I think that the world is in a number of ways broken. I also happen to believe that the world is no more broken now than it ever has been. I know that's a little bit of a controversial view, but I think the world is not any more broken now than it has always been. And we get to make decisions every single day about what we will prioritize, whether we will prioritize our own security, or we will prioritize salvation for the world. And we each, in all of our decisions, get to make those choices. And then how the world is expressed after that, or through that, defines whether the world is redeemed or saved. And so we have not yet seen that salvation. We've not seen the universal salvation because we have not yet done the work to make it so. And so I think to answer more directly your question, Richard, the universal salvation is only possible because the world is broken.
Yeah, I think, 100% yes. I would also add that, this world of the brokenness, is this thing that it gets kicked around in different circles, what broken means. And so there's two things that come in the Christian context. I should say specifically the evangelical Christian context in America. Let's just talk about that. There's brokenness and salvation in the Christian context. And I think that it's different than in just a God context. So let's just take it in this, because the expression here is that in the evangelical Christian world in America, the only salvation to your brokenness as a broken, fallen person is through the person and the divinity of Jesus Christ. That's the order that things go for salvation. And so that's how brokenness and salvation work in the theology of sort of a lot of, actually not just evangelical Christian, but in a way that's a lot of Christian context. Not all of them. Now, set in a Unitarian Universalism, salvation and brokenness mean different things. They don't mean that same thing. They're not talking that we would never, I don't think in my theology or in others, we as Unitarian Universalists would not preach about a personal brokenness. We might have I don't know, maybe we could in some way that is gentle and understanding, but we look at a world that is more broken, that each of us is a piece that can mend, that is needed in order to mend and to put back together a world. And that doing, that making is salvation, is saving, is saving the world now, not the afterworld, not in some other way. So that is sort of the view without the need for the Christ event pushing through into salvation, that I would see that even in a world talking about God or things like that, I still think if you want to, you can sort of see God that way, as God is a state of humanity putting God's world back together again. I think some theologians would agree with me. Some who are, well, I'm quoting some theologians, so I might as well just
yeah. And so,
you're all like, oh, this theologian from 50 years ago agrees with my minister TJ. No, TJ's quoting a theologian from 50 years. Sorry, DeReau, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, you started to touch on atonement theology for a little bit there, and the other thought in Christian theology that is not atonement theology is sort of aligns brokenness or sinfulness as a separation from God or a separation from godliness within yourself. So recognizing that that humans are the image of God, and sometimes often make behaviors, do things that separate us from that image, and that is the definition of that brokenness for that belief, and we can make efforts to repair that brokenness through other behaviors, other choices, other beliefs, other ways to love, or the choice to love at all in some cases. And none of this language has to be this language. This is just the language that we use, right? My personal theology, unlike TJ's, does allow for brokenness in individuals, and does allow for opportunities for healing and opportunities for us to be as individuals a developing thing, becoming better every day, becoming better through every bit of knowledge and through every experience and through every interaction, and that is how we find wholeness, hopefully sometime before our last day.
Let me clarify one thing. I do believe in brokenness. I just believe it's self-diagnosed. I don't like to tell other people they're broken. I think the way I look at it is just pastorally. Sure. My pastoral philosophy is more, most people's brokenness will be abundantly self-diagnosing in their lives or around. And I guess that's more just what I meant. So I do believe
sure. That is the way that I heard you, and I'm sorry that I misrepresented that. I think in a capitalist society that I don't trust people to judge for themselves whether or not they've got brokenness.
Damn.
So I sometimes have no problem letting them know.
And so here's the funny thing, and I want to get back to music. I know I see some other things that imply that I think that you're being a little binary, Richard, by this implication that if there's a broken world, then there must be a perfect world. Because I actually see brokenness not as abjectly bad. Brokenness is somewhere in between irredeemable and perfect. I don't want a perfect world. That sounds awful. I don't think that's gonna happen. It sounds like punishment for good behavior. I think, but brokenness is somewhere in between perfection and complete obliteration. So I don't want to go too far on this, because where I wanted to go is that I say this about brokenness, but what are the songs that speak the most to me, heal me, comfort me? Like, it's almost that we're proving a negative, because the songs that sing to me the most are the ones that are about that healing, the balm in Gilead and Amazing Grace, and that are like, oh, it's almost like the medicine work. That must mean I have the disease. So the medicine to heal brokenness feels so good, I must have brokenness. And it's like, oh, curses, right? That's right? I mean, do you think that sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and maybe woundedness is a better way to think of it. But I don't, I don't know. There's Imani Perry in her book Breathe creates this image of brokenness in humanity, in shards of colored glass, that we can leave the pile of colored glass on the floor, or we can bind it together with strips of gold and silver and create something beautiful of that brokenness that is now whole in a new and newly beautiful way. And if we drop that window or whatever it is we've created, it is now broken again, and we have a new opportunity to make it whole again. It doesn't have, nothing that we do and nothing that we become has to be permanent. We have opportunities throughout our whole lives to recreate ourselves through finding those strips of gold and silver that can make us whole again.
Yeah. There's the old story of Winchester Cathedral. I preached about it a few years ago, but during the revolution, the Cromwell Revolution in England, they broke all the beautiful stained glass that all the images of everything, and like saints and stuff like that in Winchester Cathedral. But they didn't have this, the brothers and the sisters just put together all of the glass and just put it up because they needed to get a window up. But they didn't worry about whether it worked for the image. They just kind of made designs and got the lead, and now there are these striking images of just like remade and reborn, and it's vibrant and terrifying and beautiful and awe-inspiring, much more so than ever before. So yeah, I mean, remaking with these shards of glasses, it's literally been done. Like, it's not just figurative. So yeah, that's beautiful. Good. I think we've solved it. We solved everything that's wrong. So it's funny. I don't talk about some of this stuff in church, and we're talking about it here, and I wonder if and I'm being kind of self-searching here, but if like my hesitancy to kind of talk in this way comes from a wanting a more what I think of as a universal appeal to messages from the pulpit or messages from worship. And I sometimes rely on the music and the readings to have a little bit more of a little push and a little nudge, in that direction. I mean, what do you think about preaching in the UU world? Who's doing it right? Who's getting into some of this stuff? And I mean, how do you see this coming out? I just feel like, I don't know. So, I'm afraid. So, yeah.
Yeah. So the problem is one of capitalism, right? Because churches, in order for them to work well, they need to be funded. And in order for people to feel comfortable funding a church, they need to feel comfortable in the church, and they need to feel like the church is giving them joy and happiness and comfort. And so we end up preaching joy and happiness and comfort and hope. And I think sometimes at the loss of, or at the detriment to, the broader truth, which is that there is something out there worth needing to be healed. There is some need out there for a truth that doesn't feel good all the time. And there is a need for a broadened perspective. There is a need for me as an individual to understand that the words that make me itchy or the ideas that make me uncomfortable might be bringing healing, or might be bringing a very much needed perspective to somebody else. And actually maybe the work that I need to do is not be angry about that, but to instead wonder where in my life that itchiness is coming from, and see what's behind it all. So I don't know. The answer is both things, TJ. I think yes, I think nobody's doing it right. I think if we were doing it right, if Unitarian Universalism were preaching the right message, it would have been less possible for things like what happened at the Capitol on Wednesday to happen, right? And if everybody was doing it right, if everybody was preaching the message that needed to be preached, nobody would have a job. There would be no churches. So
That's
so
why King's
something.
Chapel, this is the only message King's Chapel should be preaching, because they
That's
don't
right.
ever have to worry about putting another butt in the seat in their entire lives because they have a
That's
$1 billion endowment.
Or Shelter Rock, or yeah.
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 Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. I think, you know, the congregational polity model works really well for most things. But when it comes to controlling the pulpit, we talk about the freedom of the pulpit that preachers have, but it's not real because it's attached to capitalism, unfortunately. So there's a very real expectation that if I'm not hearing the message I want to hear in the way that I want to hear it, I can stop giving my money anytime I want, and that is just an unfortunate. It's an unfortunate residue of the capitalist society that we're functioning in.
I had a congregant say to me, because I get, you know my preaching, I get a little close to that line, and then I move into something charming and cute. You know, it's like, this is my thing. I'll like go up to this and people will be like, you know, this is hard. This is a hard thing we need to look at, maybe about yourself. Here's a funny story about TJ making a mistake, you know, and so someone told me once, they're like, I see what you do. Like, you're coming up there, you know, and touching it. And I've sometimes wondered, I joke about this, and now if I do it, everyone's gonna know who wrote it. But I sometimes think about a book that's a collection of ministers, and I ask them all to write the one sermon they could never preach. And then we put it in a volume anonymously and have it go to, like, the sales of it, if anyone would ever buy it, would go to help ministers, you know, in need, or other folks in need, like going through, you know, crises, you know, and stuff like that. I always wonder what that would be like and what that sermon would be. And someone said, well, whatever sermon you wrote is actually the first one you should have preached, not the one you should wait for an anonymous volume to write it in. I was like, it's probably good advice. So
Yeah. Well, and you know me, and you all heard my preaching too. I am almost always the guest preacher, so I get to come and say that thing that nobody else will say, and then I get to say, it was so nice to be with you, goodbye.
That's true. Yeah, and I want to clarify. I was just getting some messages, like, there are many ministers who give and I think I am one of them, who give very true sermons and speak the truth and talk about, you know, the things that are there that need to be said and that are there. And I want to be also clear, I've never been untruthful with my congregation. Like, I'm never not saying what I truly believe, but there is what DeReau and I are talking about is getting into subjects that are not that fun to hear about, you know, about like selfishness and, you know, things like that might come up that, you know, it's not fun to hear about oneself on a Sunday. You know, which is why I'm actually gonna start having worship on Wednesday nights instead. No, I'm just kidding. No, but it's yeah, and it's something. It's a line that every minister kind of rides, and I don't know. It's a tricky one. So, but here I'm like thinking right now out loud. I'm just doing just moments just for me right now as I'm just thinking. But yeah. So, when are you guys thinking of bringing a choir back together? I'm just kind of curious.
So we don't know. I mean, I think it's not going to be before next January, but we hope that maybe by September, depending on how the vaccine rollout goes. What we're thinking about doing is surveying the music program to see how many people would feel comfortable registering their vaccination with the church. And if almost everyone feels comfortable registering their vaccination with the church, that increases our ability to be able to bring the choir back sooner. Because if we've got 80% of the music program, you know, vaccinated and registered with the church, then we can have an 80% size choir, which is still, in our case, very large.
Yeah.
But it's just it's a little dicey. You can, you know, asking people to register their personal information with their church is a little bit, you know, it rides. It creates at least an ethical question. I won't say that it rides an ethical line, but it at least asks an ethical question.
Yeah,
And so we'll see.
it is interesting. Yeah, I actually was kind of wondering about that too, because I got an email from my health provider saying that starting January 12th, you can make an appointment if you're over the age of 75 to have your vaccination here in Hawaii. So starting tomorrow, but or starting today, I guess. So interesting. So what else? I guess that's a lot of what I wanted to talk about. I know we're kind of coming up on time, but do you have any questions for us? How things are going out here, or anything like that?
No, none that have come to mind.
I probably
all
owe you some thoughts about a certain sermon I'm doing in February, don't I?
I was going to ask if you were coming to see us in February.
I am.
Will you travel here, or will you do it virtually?
I think I'm going to do it virtually. I think
Okay.
it's the only safe. For those of you who don't know, I was asked to preach at the Portland Church on February 28th. So I'll be that's a day that Carol is preaching and Karen Vlasic will be assisting. And I'll be I guess, am I doing two? Are you guys doing two shows or just one?
Nope, just one.
Oh, okay.
One very large show.
All right. So what music do you want to do?
Well, as it turns out, it is the month of wholeness. So maybe we have written your sermon already. I don't know.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Oh, it hate. No, I'm just kidding. Come in and make everyone super sad, and then
of course,
clean it up the next week.
Yeah, senior ministers love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll sing whatever. We'll sing whatever you want to preach about.
Okay. I was listening to DeReau did an amazing arrangement of The Weight by the band, and I didn't ask him to do it, but like he saw the title of my sermon, which was literally like from the lyric of the song, and then he said, "Here's what I'm thinking of doing," and I was like, "Who are you? What what kind of freak are you?" That he like read my mind, that that's what the sermon was about. And I think it was "Take a Load Off" or something like that was the sermon, and we did the band. Now this is one of those things that me and DeReau agree on. Do you know that I never heard the band's version till after I had heard Aretha's version?
Oh yeah.
And if you have not heard Aretha Franklin's version of The Weight, you are missing out. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so when I heard the band do it, who was the original, I was like, it's good. I mean, it's all right. So, so Janice is asking, I know we're all chatting. What time is the service in Portland?
Well, I mean, so you can watch the service in real time at 10:15 a.m. Pacific.
So okay, so 12:15 p.m.
So that's what? Too early for you? Or...
No, it's later. It's 12:15 here.
Is that true, or is it?
Yeah.
It's 8:15. 8:15 there.
Yeah.
Oh, 8:15. Yeah. So 8:15.
But our services run in perpetuity on YouTube. So you can watch them in real time on YouTube, or you can watch them, later. You can do it when you wake up at a reasonable time, and watch services in Portland.
So I could preach from. Anyway, let's not do logistics.
Yeah,
now.
we don't use Zoom, so you wouldn't be able to do it in real time.
Oh, got it. All right. So I either have to pre-record it or go.
That's right.
Interesting. So one question, what kind of instruments do you have in addition to the choir, DeReau? This is a big. Are you still doing the handbells?
In normal times?
Yeah, in normal times.
So we've got a pianist and with a piano, and we've got an organist who plays an organ, and we've got lots and lots of handbells available. The church owns many percussion instruments, all the ones that you would expect and some that you wouldn't. We own a vibraphone, which is we own a shofar. How deep do you want me to get in this?
Right? Yeah.
What's that?
And a harpsichord, right?
And we have two virgin. Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
Two virginal harpsichords. Yep.
So we had a question from one of our members here that our RE program for children is getting together a core selection on the website of hymns. We now have all of the streaming licenses that you could ever imagine. And so we are getting together some hymns. And one question was, what are some core or some primary intergenerational hymns that you can think of that are, I mean, all of them should be in some sense, but I mean, Go Lift It Up, or like, are there others like that you think are ones that the whole congregation can sing together when the children have learned them?
Let's see. So we use, I'll give you a couple. One that we use to open our family service every week, which we do now in pandemic times. You probably wouldn't know that, TJ. But we'd use a Mark Miller's From This Bright Hour, which you probably know as a Yaley.
Mm-hmm.
So our family service opens with that every week. One that we use at the Elliott camp, which is probably less familiar to most of you. Although I do remember meeting a woman who sometimes is with you who lives in Bellingham at other times of the year.
Yes, she's on with us.
Oh, hello.
Hi, Beth. Yeah.
Is it Beth?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay. So the Elliott camp uses a song called As You Go, which is wonderful. It's by Kathleen Tracy. It's a wonderful hymn. I'm not recalling very many others. The problem with Unitarian Universalism and music for intergenerational purposes is that most of the music that we have is about sending the kids away. So I don't, there's not a whole lot of resources that come immediately to mind. But those are a few that we use. I really, speaking of music that's As We Leave This Friendly Place. Is really beautiful.
As We Leave This Friendly Place. You froze a little bit, but yeah.
Oh, yes, that's what it was. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, speaking of As We Leave This Friendly Place, you are a full-time student doing intensive study in a rainstorm, and I'm a hungry minister that needs to go to the grocery store. So I think we've eclipsed our time here. But as always, this was a phenomenally fun time to be together. And I know that you are. I'm just looking at all the smiles on everyone's faces. So I'm gonna unpin everyone and just say thank you. And I'm gonna stop the recording. So thank you for this wonderful time.